Hello students, welcome to our afternoon read aloud. We've been reading books to learn about Martin Luther King Jr., MLK Jr., and the Civil Rights Movement. So we started off by reading a few biographies. Remember, a biography is a book about someone's life. We read a couple of biographies about MLK and also about Rosa Parks, right? Then we also, last time, we read an autobiography. That is also a book about someone's life that is written by that person. So that's the difference. It is written by the person themselves. And so we read I Am Rosa Parks, which was different because it was an autobiography. It was also a little different because it's in a picture book style, right? It's in a picture book style like this picture book biography of MLK. Today I have a super special book for you. It's one of my favorite books to share with children about the Civil Rights Movement. It is an autobiography by a woman who was once a little girl named Ruby Bridges. And if you'll remember in our learning about civil rights, segregation was separation of the races, and even school children did not get to go to the same schools as white people. They went to, as white children, they went to other schools that often were not as good. Maybe they were smaller. Remember, Rosa Parks said at her school, all the kids were in one room, all the ages all together. They didn't have a school bus, lots of other stuff was not that great about the school. So Ruby Bridges did things to change that. And we're going to read her autobiography today. Here we go. Ruby Bridges Goes to School, My True Story by Ruby Bridges. And that's a real picture of her when she's little. Here we go. Here's the title page. Ruby Bridges Goes to School, My True Story by Ruby Bridges. Oh, wow. I see protest posters. We want white tenants in our white community. We won't go to school with Negroes. Wow. Those are not very nice signs. A long time ago, some people thought that black people and white people should not be friends. In some places, black people were not allowed to live in the same neighborhoods as white people. Oh, here are more signs that show for colored, the separation, segregation. In some places, black people were not allowed to eat in the same restaurants as white people, right? And that says whites only. And in some places, black children and white children could not go to the same schools. This is called segregation. The United States government said segregation is wrong. People should live where they want. People should eat where they want. Children should go to school where they want. And this picture stands for like the government, right? Like a lawyer or someone from the government. My name is Ruby Bridges. In 1960, I went to kindergarten in a school for black children. I liked my school. I liked my teacher. I liked my friends. Wow, I got to stop and think a minute, because on this page it said that the government said segregation is wrong. So this must be after they changed the laws, they changed the rules, but people were still kept separate because in communities, especially in the South, white people didn't agree with the change in the laws. So they still tried to push back and not let black people join in everywhere into all the things they had a right to. So let's just reread a little. She says, in 1960, I went to kindergarten in a school for black children. I liked my school, I liked my teacher, I liked my friends. So she was in a school with other black kids. But, oh, here's William Frantz Public School. But there was a school for white children even closer to my house than the school for black children. It was the William Frantz Elementary School. The government said Ruby Bridges should be allowed to go to the William Frantz School. Ooh, there she is with some big grown-ups. Let's see. In 1961, I was in first grade, just like you guys. My mother took me to the France school. Marshals came with us to make sure that we were safe. A marshal is like a policeman, but from the federal government, from the government in Washington, D.C. They use marshals sometimes when the local police, the police in the city or town, maybe don't agree or they can't count on their help, so they bring police from somewhere else to help. Some people did not want a black child to go to the white school. They stood near the school. They yelled at me to go away. We want segregation. We don't want to integrate. Oh, those are protesters against the change. Parents took their children out of the school. I was alone with my teacher, Mrs. Henry. So she was all alone in her school because the parents who did not want their children to go to school with a black child took their kids out. I loved Mrs. Henry, and Mrs. Henry loved me. I was a very good student. I learned math. I learned how to read, but I wished the children would come back. Months and months passed. Then, one day, children began to come back to school. At last, I had friends to play with. I was very, very happy. Many people have read about me in newspapers and books. A famous writer, John Steinbeck, wrote about me. He wrote that I was very brave. A first lady, that's like the wife of the president. A first lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, wrote a letter to me. The letter told me that I was a good American. Norman Rockwell was an artist who painted a picture of me. The painting has become very famous. And this is part of the painting, and it shows her being protected by the marshals. But still, look, people are throwing things, like throwing tomatoes at her to try to make her afraid and to not go to school. Now I am grown up. I am married. I have children. One day, Mrs. Henry and I were both asked to be on a TV show. That was the first time we had seen each other in many years. Now we talk to each other often. That's her old teacher, right? Now, black children and white children can go to the same schools. I like to visit schools. I tell my story to children. I tell children that black people and white people can be friends. And there she is as a grown-up, right? Visiting a school. And most important, I tell children to be kind to each other. Wow. So we got to do something at the end of the book, right? And I always have I have a few favorite pictures in this book that I always love to go see. I really love to see this this picture of her. She just looks so sweet and ready to go to school, right? And then I also love the picture when the children start to come back, and so she has children to play with. Wow, isn't that great? So again, remember, this is about Ruby Bridges, who, when she was only a little kid, a 6-year-old starting in first grade, was doing something to fight for civil rights. Her parents had her do that, encouraged her. And remember, that was an autobiography because she wrote it herself, right? Ruby Bridges Goes to School, my true story. I hope you enjoyed our afternoon read aloud. Don't forget to keep washing your hands, cover your coughs and sneezes, do some reading, do some writing, help your family around the house, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.